varmt välkomna tillbaka till oss här på Winetable. Jag heter i vanlig ordning Andreas Grube och vi sitter här på Winetables headquarters, tillika tv-studio. Och ikväll så ska vi iväg på lite speciell resa. Vi ska åka till Portugal, närmare bestämt Península de Setúbal, strax utanför Lissabon. Och vi ska grotta ner oss i några av vinerna från ett av regionens eller ett av landens främsta vinhus, nämligen José Maria de Fonseca. Och jag ska snart gå över på engelska för vi har en prominent gäst i studion såklart, för det här är en Meet the Winemaker. Men innan dess så ska jag säga att i vanlig ordning så har vi en liten tävling. Man kan vinna 2 stycken Cab Merlot-glas från Riedels Veloce-serie. Och allt man behöver göra är att ställa lite frågor, kommentera. Ni kan skriva om ni dricker något gott där hemma, om ni äter och dricker en härlig kombination. Eller som sagt bara ställa frågor. Det gör ni i kommentarsfältet nedanför i den plattform där ni är. Och som sagt, oavsett om ni har frågor eller inte, det är kul om ni kommenterar varandras dryckesval och om ni har något gott i glasen och på tallrikarna. Och tagga oss då gärna förstås på winetable.se i sociala medier. Vi kommer hålla på en timme och kommer svara på så mycket frågor vi kan. Och de som inte hinner med tar vi på online efteråt. But now let me change into English because we have a very prominent guest here tonight, a very special guest, and I'm super happy to welcome António Maria Soares Franco.
Thank you.
You're the CEO of the winehouse.
Yes.
Yeah.
Currently the CEO.
Currently
co-CEO actually. It's me and my cousin Francisco.
Yeah, and you've been CEO for how long?
We've been co-CEOs for the last 4 years. Since the
4 years, yeah.
During the pandemic, we decided to make this change in the company.
Yeah, okay.
And the next generation, so the 7th generation, now became CEOs in 2020.
Yeah, but it's a family company, basically.
Yeah, it's a family since the beginning.
Yeah.
Actually, this year is our 190th anniversary. We are the oldest still wine company in Portugal. We were founded in 1834, and always in the same family. So the family runs and owns the company. So now it's in the 7th generation.
That's pretty cool. Yeah. And you've been, I mean, and you we're going to taste both white, red, and also fortified wines. But you've been producing all kinds of wines all the way
since the beginning.
Since the beginning, yeah.
We have old stocks of old bottles. Actually, Periquita is the oldest brand of Portuguese red wine, going back to the 19th century. So we have bottles of Periquita for almost since the foundation of the company.
Cool.
But also the fortified wines are something that the founder of the company was making already almost 200 years ago.
Yeah, we've actually met before. I was luckily in 2018. I was what do you call it when you're sort of honored with the title of the Periquita Confraria?
Confraria in Portuguese we say confraria.
Yeah,
it's a brotherhood.
Yeah, it's the closest I'll get to.
So we are brothers.
Yeah, we're brothers, and this is the closest I'll get to being a knight.
Yeah,
it's always been like a knighthood. But it was 7 years ago. But can you just tell the viewers a little bit the company when it actually started? How did everything?
So the company started. José Maria de Fonseca started in 1834. It was started by the man with the same name of the company, Mr. José Maria de Fonseca. Is our founder and our ancestor, and he was actually not. His family was not from the wine business at the time. He had different kind of businesses, but he. When he arrived in our area, he got some land in the area, and the land there already was had vineyards and were producing wine. So when he arrived there in 1834, he fell in love with the area, with the region, with the landscape, and with the wine business. So he decided to set up his wine business back in 1834.
Yeah.
And because he was not from the wine business, he was an outsider. He looked at this business with completely fresh new eyes. So he did a lot of innovations, and Periquita is one of the innovations that he did. He started to sell his wine almost from the beginning. He started to sell his wine in a bottle, which was not common at the time.
That was not common at the time at all. You usually sold them like some kind of bags or
only port wine and Madeira wine were being sold in bottles, but red wines were sort of sold like commodity product in bulk, in a barrel. It was the wine of this producer, of that producer. There was no really brand names behind red wines.
No.
And Mr. Fonseca, he thought it would, and he has a famous saying that he said, "This is the prestigious way to present things." And so he decided to start to sell his wine in a bottle, to sort of giving more value added to his consumers. It was a guarantee that the wine that they were drinking was the same wine that he was bottling at the winery. So it was a guarantee of quality.
Yeah, yeah.
And he was really a marketeer because he put his label saying Periquita, and actually nowadays the Periquita labels are very similar to what it was already in the beginning. So with a label, with a nice cork, with a nice glass bottle.
Yeah.
So he was a visionary in the wine business, of course.
And all the wines we're going to taste today are from Peninsula de Setúbal. Excuse me if I'm pronouncing it not correctly, but you have vineyards in different parts of Portugal,
yes.
right? Yeah.
Well, most of our vineyards are in the Setúbal Peninsula. These vineyards are, some vineyards belong to the company and some vineyards belong to the family members. So, but the majority are there. Setúbal Peninsula is a region south of Lisbon, next to the Atlantic Ocean. So more or less in the center south of Portugal.
What are the characteristics when it comes to sort of the climatic factors there?
So this region is more southern region. So we have the good qualities of a southern region, more influence from the sun, exposure, a little bit more warmth. But at the same time, it's close to the ocean. So you have the influence of the Atlantic Ocean. We have a mountain range called the Arrábida mountain, which also has a nice influence in the vineyards that are planted next to that mountain. So there's a lot of there's maybe 2 or 3 different climates and terroirs in the region that combining the grapes that coming from the different terroirs to make good fantastic styles of wine.
And the soils, they're also quite different kinds of soil.
Very
they're
different,
all
yes.
sandy, and they're all
more sandy in the southeast part of the region. And the sandy soils give origin to more fruity wines with a little bit more color and a little bit more alcoholic percentages as well. But then on the clay soils, which are on the mountain range, on the Arrábida Peninsula, on the Arrábida mountain, then we have wines that are more fresh with a little bit more acidity, more elegant, a little bit lighter. So combining these 2 types of terroir makes the region super interesting.
Yeah, and when it comes to hectares, how big is the region? If you in total, not only your vineyards, but in total,
so the region in total is about 7,000 hectares.
Yeah,
and we own on the Setúbal Peninsula, we control about 550 hectares. So we are a big player in the Setúbal Peninsula.
For sure. Yeah. And you told me before we started here that Peninsula Setúbal is sort of the 4th biggest region.
In Portugal.
When it comes to hectares and production of wine. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Should we start off with some wine?
Yeah.
That's why we're here.
Yes,
that's
absolutely.
basically why we're here. And we're going to start off with I'll top you up here with a quite new release. It was launched in the fixed assortment in Sweden here in September. And it's called Periquita White, and it's a totally new thing for the Swedish markets.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about the wine? Well, I mean, what's the idea behind this wine?
So here on the Periquita wine, we are blending 3 grape varieties, 3 Portuguese varieties. You have around 50% of the wine is Arinto variety. Arinto is a variety more typical from the northern part of Lisbon. It's in a variety that gives a lot of freshness and nice acidity to the wine. And then citrus flavor, very fresh, crisp. And then you have around 45% of the blend is Fernão Pires. That grape is very typical from our region. Gives more aromatics, more floral components to the wine. And lastly is Anton Vaz, around 5% of this variety. Anton Vaz gives a little bit more structure and weight to the wine.
Okay. Yeah, because on the nose, I would say that it's quite. I mean, it's floral.
Floral,
and
yes.
It's quite with tropical fruits and ripe citrus. So let's have a sip.
So this one just was introduced now this
in September. Yeah, early September.
And it has a sustainability certification as well. So we started to work with Fair and Green back in 2020, so 4 years ago, and to make sure that all of the products or all of the wines that we produce in our winery in Azeitão can be certified in sustainability. Sustainability basically has 3 pillars. One is environment, one is social, and one is governance of the company. So we make sure that on all 3 pillars we work in a way that makes the company to be sustainable. We are in the 7th generation, and we want the company to live for at least the next 7 generations.
Yeah. Is that would you say in general in Portugal is I mean, like in the rest of the wine world, the sort of ecological or organical thing it's increasing, it's becoming a bigger thing?
Well, I think that the theme now is really sustainable because organic is just looking at the vineyard or at the environment alone, and we cannot forget that there are other things that are super important for the people around the area, the people that work with us, the people that contribute,
and waste control,
energy and waste, packaging. So a lot of other things involved. So nowadays the trend is more to speak about sustainability and not just organic or biological wines.
But it's fun because I think a lot of people, if you're not talking about Vinho Verde, of course, but otherwise, a lot of people tend to think about Portugal as a red wine country.
Yeah.
But you said, I mean, this is white wine, obviously, and you said that you produce like 12 different
types of white wine. Yes.
Several. So it's a quite big thing.
Our region is a great region for white wine, being close to the ocean. We have great grape varieties like Fernão Pires is very typical. Also, Moscatel de Setúbal is a white variety from the region. Producing a big percentage of the region is still white wines. And now it's also in line with the trends of the market that people are drinking more and more whites and rosés and sparkling. So our region is fantastic for that.
Yeah. And for wine like this, what would you enjoy it with, for like snacks or food?
I think it's you can go well with a nice light salad, like a prawn salad, or even some shellfish, some Portuguese seafood as well.
Of course.
Even a codfish, a bacalhau, which is so typical in Portuguese cuisine. I think it goes well with many different dishes.
Yeah, I was in Lisboa like a year ago, and had one. It's a great dish with some like big prawns and some rice, and it was quite spicy as well.
Yeah,
it was super good. But I think this wine would work quite well because it has the acidity, but it also has a roundness to it.
Even with sushi, for example, could be a good companion to sushi.
Yeah, definitely. Fun, and it's definitely a nice wine. Yeah, quite easy drinking and enjoyable. Yeah. Should we go for another new launch? Also wine launched in early September. The 2nd of September. Also in the fixed assortment. And it's Alma Portuguesa, and it's 2023. What can you tell us about this wine?
Well, this is, of course, a red wine from the same region, from the Setúbal Peninsula. Here, the wine is coming more from the sandy soils, so more the fruit component, a little bit more weight in the wine. Very elegant, with a nice acidity. Alma in Portuguese means soul. It's so it's
soul,
soul, Portuguese soul. That's why we chose the name Alma. I understand it's also a Swedish.
It's a Swedish name.
A Swedish name as well. So it's
female name.
It's a brand that makes sense. This is a wine that's 100% Castelão. Castelão is the main red variety in our region. Actually, the Castelão variety was brought by our founder, Mr. José Maria de Fonseca. He was the person that planted for the first time Castelão in our region, because in the early 19th century, Castelão did not exist in the Setúbal Peninsula.
Okay.
and it was Mr. Fonseca who planted the first vineyards of Castelão there, and initially he started to sell the wine as Periquita. Of course, Periquita is our most important brand.
But it's also because that's also a synonym to the
yes,
actually
because
the great Castelão and Periquita is
because the wine was so successful that a lot of viticultures in the area were asking Mr. Fonseca for grapes of Periquita to plant in their own vineyards, and they were calling it Periquita and not calling the official name of the grape, which is Castelão. So that's a tribute to the quality of the wine Periquita and the success of Periquita.
Yeah, fun story about the name as well. But can you Castelão? Can you sort of describe the variety? What are the characteristics when it comes to acidity?
On one side you have a good fruit component. For example, plums, some more dark berries as well.
But it's thick skins.
Thick skin. So
are they big? The berries?
They are medium size. I would say. So they are very resistant to diseases. So they adapted very well to the sandy soils in our region. And on the other side, they have a nice acidity component, which makes the wine from Castelão to age really super well. We just had in the winery, we had last week a big tasting with Periquita wines, going back all the way back to 1940. And you would not imagine how the wine from 1940 was performing, and that's because really the Castelão variety works so well in terms of aging and can.
And we have a question from Johan. He asks, how old are the stocks? I mean, the vines.
The vines on these two wines. These are basically vines that my grandfather planted around the early 90s. So the vines are about 30 something years old. Okay. So they are at the right age to be producing top quality fruit for.
And in the area on the peninsula, are there a lot of preserved? I mean, really super old vines as well.
There are a mixture of super old vines on the reds, mostly with Castelão, and relatively younger, I would say 30 to younger vineyards that have other varieties as well. So one of the things that my grandfather also started to introduce other varieties like Touriga Nacional, Touriga Franca, even Firar, Annat. So grapes that were not common in the area. Our company and our family was responsible for introducing a lot of these varieties to the area.
Yeah. Could you describe what would you have
I think
in the glass
this
here?
is a perfect example of Castelão. You have this good fruit component on one side, nice structure, but at the same time you had this acidity that is not overwhelming. It's an elegant acidity that helps the wine to be lively. I think this wine would go very well with a lot of Swedish foods. Now we're almost into hunting season, so a lot of game would go very well with this wine.
But it has a nice body in the fruits. But also has almost like a slight pepperiness.
It
like
has a little bit of spiciness. Yes,
and almost we have a kind of candy here in Sweden that's they call lakrits dödskalle. It's like raspberries and licorice, in a combination, but it's just quite ripe raspberries and licorice, and it's just I find it in this wine. It's quite nice. I agree. This is sort of really the season we're going into now in Sweden, the fall, with a lot of mushrooms and game and these stews that I've been cooking for a long time.
More winter food.
Anna asks quite an interesting question here. How do you see the future for the sort of the Portuguese grapes, the inhemska?
I think they are. It's super interesting because I think the wine world is moving into looking for more authentic things, more things that are really different. We went through a phase maybe 10, 15 years ago where all wines were tasting more or less the same, and I think consumers now are looking for different things, more unique, more authentic. And Portugal has this unique thing, which is the indigenous grape varieties. We have
indigenous, that's the word. Thank you.
We have a lot of different varieties. Even between the same variety, we have, for example, Touriga Nacional. We have maybe more than 20 clones of this variety that give very different wines. So there is a lot of diversity with Portuguese wines that our consumers are appreciating. So we are seeing sales of Portuguese wine in many different countries growing. Even the younger generations are discovering Portuguese wines. It's a generation of discovery as well. People want to try new things all the time.
I would agree on that, and that goes for every wine region or country. That maybe like 10, 20 years ago, it would be a disadvantage for Portugal that you have 300, 400 different indigenous
mostly
varieties.
unknown.
Mostly unknown and quite hard to pronounce, quite hard to spell. But today, it feels like every country that has indigenous grapes varieties, they highlight them because it makes them unique, and that's of course is important. Magnus asks, is Castelao synonym to some other grape, or totally unique? I mean, it is synonym to Periquita, but but you don't find it in basically it's not a synonym to a famous.
It's a Portuguese variety.
But it has several synonyms. I know, but
super difficult to say. Castelão is similar to Pinot Noir, or it's difficult to associate Castelão to an internationally known grape.
It has no DNA. No. Also, Stefan asks, these first two wines, are they only on box, or are they on bottle as well?
They are in Sweden in box. So
in Sweden box, yeah.
They are available in box.
Now we'll go into the third wine, which is has become a classic on the shelves in Sweden. It's I looked it up, and it was actually introduced in 2008, and it's the Periquita Reserva, and this is a 2022. And again, Periquita is a synonym for Castelao. But can you tell us the story about Periquita as a brand?
So, well, as I said before, the founder planted Castelão variety in our region, and he planted it specifically in a vineyard that was called Cova da Periquita. That was the name of the vineyard back in the 19th century. Nowadays there is no vineyard there, but we know more or less where it was located. So that's the name of the initial vineyard where the wine started to be produced. And it has been produced since the 1850 every year. 1850.
Wow,
So that's really the first wine brand in Portuguese wine. It is really an ambassador of Portuguese wines all over the world. In Sweden, I would say it's the oldest Portuguese wine in the market. One of the
everybody
knows Periquita.
Yeah.
So in this case, Periquita Reserva. In the old days, we had a different concept for this wine. So basically, it was the same as the red Periquita, but in the best years of Periquita, we would keep aside the first 1,000 cases of wine, and then we would release this wine a few years later, and we would call it Periquita Reserva. Basically, it was the same wine, but just with more bottle aging. But when we launched this wine in Sweden back in 2008, as you said, we decided to change the concept, and so in this case it's a different wine from the Periquita Red. It still has Castelão as the main variety, but then we add Touriga Nacional and Touriga Franca, and these are two varieties more typical from the Down and Douro area, mostly used in port wine. They're very typical in port wine, and these are again varieties that my grandfather planted in the early 90s. So now the vineyards are 30-something years old, and we believe it's producing good quality fruit to go into Periquita Reserva. The concept reserve in Portugal is different from Spain. So in Portugal is a synonymous of quality. So whenever we need to bottle a Periquita Reserva, so we need to send a sample of the wine to the local wine commission, and the independent tasting panel needs to approve the wine as Reserva quality.
Oh, okay. So
it's a matter of higher quality.
So it doesn't have to
no,
do with
it's
the
not like the Spanish
time
no.
or anything. Oh, okay. All right. I got a question here from Karin. Do you mature your wines in oak, and if so, what type and size do you prefer?
So most of the wines we use. Well, first of all, the philosophy of the winemakers in the company is, of course, the oak is there, but the oak is not the main part of the wine. No. The oak is just there to support the fruit. The fruit should be the star and the highlight of the wine. So the philosophy of the company is never to have very oak influenced wines. So typically you will not see wines that are aged more than 8-10 months in oak.
No.
We use mostly a variety of French oak and American oak. It depends on the style of the wine that we want to achieve. It's more American or more French, or a blend of the two.
And for this, for example, the Periquita Reserva, what do you use?
For this is a blend of French and American oak.
Okay.
Yeah.
But also, it's also always interesting to talk. It's mainly Castelao. It's around 50% Castelao.
Yes.
Yeah. But the other two, the Touriga Franca and Touriga Nacional, what do they bring sort of to that? Because what makes this different from? Yeah.
So these two Tourigas are, even though they have a similar first name, Touriga, they are completely different varieties. The Touriga Nacional is much more exuberant variety, very aromatic. A lot of flavors and aromas of flower of violets. That's a very typical characteristic of Touriga Nacional. And Touriga Franca, on the other side, is a lot more shy in the beginning. It develops much better along the way, more in the future. So they combine super well, Touriga Nacional and Touriga Franca.
So Franca doesn't have more like the structural part?
More structure, it has more intensity, Touriga Franca. But it is, when it's younger, it is more shy than the Touriga Nacional. So in the beginning you'll have more Touriga Nacional, and as the wine ages, maybe 10 years from now, you'll feel more the Touriga Franca later on.
Okay, yeah. I mean, this is here we have definitely also the sort of the concentration of fruit, but also another. You can feel the oak.
You have a little bit more oak here
than
on the almond,
smokiness, or just a little more spiciness to it.
Yes,
and you can
more
also
structure, a little bit more color here as well.
Yeah, a little more dense.
More depth.
Depth. Yeah, definitely. What would you pair this with food-wise?
I think here. Again, all kinds of game, but I would say a little bit more cooked meat. The wine has a little bit more structure. It requires food that is a little bit more complex, I would say. So a lamb, for example, is a nice combination. Some deer could be good as well for this.
I could like a Sunday roast, or just like entrecote with some pommes frites and the béarnaise sauce. It would be really
fantastic.
Nice. Yeah, fantastic. We have got sort of the fattiness and the meatiness. But a question here again from Johan: for how long can you save the Reserva? For how long would you keep this in the cellar if you?
I would say, looking at the example of the tasting of Periquita that I just mentioned, both the Periquita and Periquita Reserva can last for a super long time. And I would say this wine easily it could last in this style for the next 5-10 years, and then of course it holds on for a longer time with different characteristics. It's not gonna be the same fruit character as we see right now. No. It's gonna be more developed, more tertiary aromas
as every
wine, but it will hold for a very long time.
When it comes to the peninsula itself, I mean, how big are the microclimate differences between? I mean, if you're sort of a little bit closer to the ocean rather than a little bit more inland, is it
I would say the sandy soil vineyards would be around 65% of the region, 65-70%.
And they're located.
And they're located
mostly
around the river. There's a river called Sado River.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's mostly around the river, most to the going to the east part of the peninsula. And then more northern part of the peninsula, closer to the ocean, you have the clay soils, the clay limestone soils, and that I would say around 30% of the vineyards are located there.
So it's mainly the soil types that will make the difference.
The soil and the influence of the influence of the mountain as well, because the Rábida mountain there, you find much bigger temperature variation from night to day. For example, now in the summer times you have cold nights in the Rábida mountain, whereas in the sandy soils you get it's not so different the temperature.
Oh, okay, I get it. People always, I mean, always interesting to talk about climate change and how it's affecting in your region. How do you notice it? How are you affected?
It is affecting. Of course, being a more southern region, we are affected by more heat waves. Fortunately, in the last 2 years, we didn't have any heat wave. But in 2022, we had a big heat wave that burned a lot of white grapes in the area. So we lost a lot of production on that year. Of course, we need to plant the vineyards looking at the future in a different way. We need to look at different varieties, different clones of varieties, different orientations of the vineyard. So traditionally in the past, vineyards were being planted in a sort of northern south facing situation where they could get more sun exposure. So sun would come from the east to the west, and they would get a lot of sun exposure. Nowadays we are changing this, so we are planting the vineyards like facing east to west, so they don't have a lot of sun on top of the sides of the vines. So that protects a little bit the grapes from the sun. Also leaving more cover from the leaves also protects a little bit of the vineyard. So we need, in terms of viticulture, there's a lot of things that we can do to mitigate the effects of climate change.
But the main grapes you're working with, they're quite heat resistant, or
Castillon, yes.
Castillon, yes, but not the.
But not, for example, the white grapes. The Muscatel grape. 2 years ago, it suffered quite a lot with heat.
Kerstin asks, how many different kinds of wine do you produce?
Well, in terms of brands, we are producing maybe more than 50 different brands.
50 different brands.
In terms of, so we have, of course, red wine, white wine, we have rosés, we have sparkling, and we have Muscatel Setúbal, which we're going to talk about later.
Very soon.
And it's really one of the highlights of the company and one of the ambassadors.
So when you're talking brands, you're also talking labels. So
labels, yes.
Yeah, so around 50 different.
Around 50 different labels, yes.
That's quite fantastic.
Yeah.
Ranging from white to
rosé, to red, sparkling, fortified.
But is one of them sort of your main production? Red, still red. We
actually have a good diversity. We have a very strong percentage of the portfolio that is white wine and rosé. I would say between white wine and rosé, we are more than 50% is these two types of wine. I would say red wine is maybe 35 to 40% of the total production, and then between 5 to 10% is the fortified wines.
Oh, okay.
So we have a strong production of whites and rosés.
Yeah, cool. Johan asks, what kind of glass would you choose for this blend? And we've chosen, it's a Cabernet Merlot. It's the Riedel-Bloche, and but basically because sort of the stylistics of the wine, I think it works really well. You have sort of the dense depth in the fruits, but you also have the spiciness.
Yeah.
It's, I think this is a great choice.
This is a great class, yes.
Talking about the fortified wines. Let's go into because it's Portugal, of course, are very known for
Fortified
ports and
Madeira.
Madeira, but also the wines you do, Moscatel de Setúbal. Yeah. So this is Moscatel de Setúbal. It's 2018. But tell us about this wine style, because this is also a fortified wine from Portugal.
Yeah. So firstly, I think it's important to explain to our viewers what is a fortified wine.
Yeah.
Not everyone knows what a fortified wine is. So fortified wine basically is a wine that has been fortified by adding brandy. So when the grape starts fermenting in the beginning of the fermentation, so they still have the sugar in the grapes, and as the sugar starts to be transformed into alcohol, we add brandy. Brandy at typically more than 70% alcohol.
Yeah.
And what the brandy does is stops the fermentation. So the wine still has residual sugar from the grapes. So it's typically sweet wines, depending on the styles of fortified, but mostly most of the time it's sweet wine. But then it has more alcohol because of the brandy we use to stop the fermentation.
It's around 17, 18.
Around 17, 18. On ports go to 20%.
Yeah.
So it's in this range of alcohol. Then these are wines that are aged most of the time or in our case always with used oak vats.
Yeah.
We want this to be an oxidative process, so it's a slow oxidation process of the wine. That's why the wine develops this more amber color as it gets older.
Color. Yeah, it's fantastic color. But I mean, because and obviously here you use the Moscatel grape, and is this something that's been produced for a very long time here?
It's in our region. We have records from the founder being producing this style of wine since the early foundation of the company. So already in the first years he was making Moscatel Setúbal wine, and he was selling this wine to many different regions around the world. Sometimes I wonder how in the beginning of the 19th century it was possible for this man to have contacts already in places like Singapore, San Francisco, South America. So he was selling this wine all over the world.
How did they do that?
How did they do that? Without the communications we have and the transports that we have nowadays. So these people were really ahead of their time.
Yeah. But I mean, but you also told me before we started, because a lot of people have heard of port and Madeira.
But not Moscatel.
Not as many people, at least, and there's an explanation to that.
Yeah, because mostly in port wine and in Madeira wine, this business was controlled by a lot of English families. So you'll see a lot of English names on the brands of port and Madeira, and the English families were the ones responsible for promoting these wines outside of Portugal. In Setúbal Peninsula, it was mostly Portuguese families, so the wine was mostly being consumed in the domestic market. So I consider Moscatel Setúbal to be the hidden gem of Portuguese fortified wines. So it's the hidden secret that now we are promoting in international markets, and people are discovering this style of wine. It's since we are close to the ocean, it has an advantage because it has nice acidity at the same time, and the acidity is super important when you have a fortified wine.
Super important, fortified and sweet wine. I mean, you have to have the acidity to get it. But this is, I love this style of wine. I mean, I love all kinds of fortified and wines. But this is, I mean, you get the almost like saffron, and it's dried apricots, and it's
apricots, some orange, some honey.
Yeah.
This is a great example of a young Moscatel. Well, we call this young. It has 6 years old. By law, it's required 18 months for the wine to be in contact with the brandy and the aging. But we prefer to be more strict than the law. So in this case, it's 6 years after the harvest. So we believe it takes some time for the wine, for the fruit and the brandy to really blend together.
Yeah. This wine, I mean, it's a perfect wine for like apple pie with some cinnamon and some sugar, of course, and you get that sort of almost syrupy feel to it.
Crème brûlée as well.
Crème brûlée, yeah. My God, it would be amazing.
I'm getting hungry now.
But is it a big thing? A lot of producers are making this style of wine. Is it like, or are you sort of
in our region? We are the
front?
oldest producer, so we have another advantage that we have is we have really old stocks of muscatel that we can use part of this stock as sort of the salt and pepper in the wines and really improve the complexity of the wines. Nowadays, I would say we have around 15 producers of muscatel wine in our region, which is always important. A region cannot survive in just one good producer. We need to have many good producers that are promoting good quality wines. So it's good that we have this many producers making this style of wine.
Yeah. Kerstin asks, would this wine match a cheese? And if so, what kind of cheese would you choose for that? It would definitely match.
I would say yes. Blue cheese, for example.
Yeah. Or even like a cheddar. I mean,
even a cheddar, yes.
Maybe sort of a creamier kind of.
We have a typical cheese in our region that I think you tasted when you were there, which is the acetone cheese, which is a more creamy cheese.
Oh yeah.
And that goes super well with muscatel wine.
Definitely, it was perfect for the cheese board, and also like. Could even have like some chocolate or
yes,
this one.
And also some dried nuts or
raisins. This is fun because in general we often talk about that when we have tastings here at Wine Table, that people should drink more sweet wines and more fortified wine because there's so much going on. There's so much complexity and depth, and it's a wine style that makes you think, sort of, because you have to so much.
But in this case, since this is a younger version, one thing I forgot to talk about is the cocktail part of it. Yeah. And nowadays, I would say between all the fortified wines, this is the least formal. Yeah. It's the most the wine that more flexible in terms of the way you consume it. And a lot of young people in Portugal are consuming it as a cocktail with tonic water, with ice, with some cinnamon stick, or with lemon.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that also is a good thing, that you should be more creative, flexible and creative when it comes to not so strict when it comes to that. But talking about that, we have another example of the style.
Yes.
A wine that would be launched as temporary in November. Yeah. And it's the same as Moscatel Estabal. It is 20 years.
Yeah. So basically this is 20 years old. 20 years old, what it means is a blend of different vintages, where the youngest wine is at least 20 years old. So in this case, we can have wines that are, the youngest one should be 22, 23 years old, and the oldest can be maybe around 80 years old, even though, of course, it's small percentages of these older wines. But this is a great example of what I spoke before, with using these old stocks that we have to really make something unique and special.
But this is like a whiskey or a cognac then, but you know that the youngest wine in this blend
at least
will
20
be
years old.
At least 20 years old, yeah.
And you will see the big differences, of course, in color. You get more concentration of color.
You can also see it on sort of the viscosity.
The viscosity is much higher.
More it's like moving slower. It's more like syrup.
And one interesting thing you'll see on the color, you'll see like a greenish rim around the wine. This happens in all wines that are old. Happens in Madeira wines that are old, in sherry, even in brandies that are old. They all have this greenish color around it. So it's really a sign of wine that's been aged. So of course the color is an important part. Here, as the wine gets older, the sugar increases, but the acidity also increases.
And also all these much more drier notes.
A lot more dried fruit, more matured fruit, more dried figs, dried nuts.
Almost like roasted nuts, hazelnuts. But I mean, it's a huge difference.
Yeah.
This is quite fantastic.
Here I say this is almost like a meditation wine. You really introspect with this wine. You're really able to go deeper in your your thoughts.
Yeah. It's always fun to share wines. Wine should be shared, but this is kind of wine that I would like to have a glass just on my own, just listening to some good music and. This is wine that also, it almost doesn't need anything to go with it, but of course this is also very, very cheese friendly wine. And
another thing on these older muscatels, for example, dark chocolate is super difficult to match with wine. Yeah. And I think the muscatel 20 years old is a perfect match of something that has a big percentage of chocolate. Yeah, yeah.
Stefan asks, do you serve it well chilled? No, we don't. It's slightly chilled.
The younger, more slightly chilled. The 20 years old, you can have it almost at natural.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit chilled, but not too much.
Around 16, 17, 18.
Yeah, 18 degrees. Yeah.
Slightly below.
You want to really feel the aromatics. So if it's too chilled, you miss a little bit on the aromatic part.
But is this a style of wine that you? I mean, if you talk about the global wine scene, is it a wine style that is gaining in awareness and popularity?
The young muscatel for sure. Yeah, it's a style that is popular with the young generations because it's more versatile, as I mentioned before, with the cocktail scene and everything. This older version, of course, it's a lot more limited quantity, so it's not available for. We don't have huge volumes of this wine to sell. So I would say mostly the young version of the muscatel is gaining more traction worldwide.
But I mean, for how long would you be able to keep a wine like this if you buy it now?
Forever. Because this wine was already oxidized. So if you open a bottle of either one of these two muscatels, you can have it 6 months from now or a year from now, and the wine will be exactly the same. It will not go bad. It will not change. Of course, the difficult thing is to think of someone buying this and waiting a whole year to drink it. So I think the people will drink it more faster than that. Yeah. But it's like a Tawny Port. Tawny Port also you can age. You can open the wine and have it open for a long time.
For a long time. Yeah. But I mean, it's fantastic.
And the color is so beautiful.
It's I don't know if you see it at home, but also the tears, whatever you call it.
And the viscosity.
Viscosity. It's and we have actually also a sort of a surprise. Oh, I have a question here before. Per wonders, can we see your high-end vineyard wines in Sweden? Or what market is destined for them more specifically? Because you have also sort of really, really high-end stuff going on.
Sometimes we've launched some of the high-end wines in some exclusive launches and TSVs also, but more exclusive. We've had some, this is, I would consider, one of our high-end wines. Yeah. We've had super old muscatels being sold and web launches also by the monopoly. So of course, you can have the more super premium wines also available in Sweden.
Emilia wonders, which one of these wines are your personal favorites?
It's difficult to. It's like when you have 6 kids. Which one is your favorite children? I love them all, but in different occasions. I think it's different wines go for different occasion consumptions. Of course, if I'm on a summer day on a pool or something, I would prefer this wine. If I'm having some friends over on a Friday night and we're having a nice meet. Maybe Periquita Reserva. If I go out with some friends, or if I'm just starting a meal, I can have the muscatel even with as a cocktail. So it's different occasions make the
Of course.
different wines.
I was with both the fortified, because it's quite. I mean, sometimes you stumble upon them, but it's not that often you drink that kind of wine. So for me, it was like, wow,
a discovery.
Yeah, but a rediscovery. But every time, I really think it was fantastic. And we have actually some special surprise for us.
Yeah.
Not for you, unfortunately. We have 100-year-old of this wine.
We have 100-year-old. So this year is it's a special year for our company. It's our 190th anniversary. In 10 years, we're gonna be 200 years old. Wow. So we decided to do a very small launch of. We're actually gonna auction this wine in the winery next month, and we decided to. Since we have again very old stocks of Muscatel Setúbal, we found a cask of 1924. So wine that's 100 years old, and we're gonna auction around 100 bottles in the winery in a month. And we decided to bring a small sample to Sweden.
I've been scared all day to drop this, and it was so much fun because when I arrived today, I didn't know what was in it.
Yeah.
Is it a red wine you're going to show us? Another a sample or something? But it's actually 100-year-old.
It is.
It is. Can I open it?
Of course. I'm just
this
sad we cannot share this with our viewers, but
oh, look at this! My God, quite fantastic.
You see the difference in color. God. It's
unbelievable. This is like really.
Then you get into all kinds of super complex, hundreds of layers of this wine.
This is quite fantastic. I get almost tearful when I get to taste wine that is. I mean, it's also a piece of history. I mean, in 1924, someone picked these grapes.
Yeah.
They vinify them and they bottle. I mean, they put them in casks. It's so long time ago.
Just
even
imagine
my mother wasn't born in
the historic events that this wine has witnessed. It's
that's quite fantastic, and it's also what makes sort of the world of wine so fantastic. But you get the geography, you get the history, and you get sort of the sensation of. This is really like.
It's almost indescribable, the wine. I think it's with so many aromas and flavors.
It is so, but it's so alive. It's
because of the acidity at the same time.
Wow, here we're drinking 100-year-old wine. Not bad.
Not every day.
No, my God. But how much do you? I mean, of this do you have? Do you have a big library, so to speak?
We bottled of this year. We bottled 180 bottles. So we're gonna auction 100, and we're gonna keep in the family cellar about 80 bottles of this vintage.
And in general, do you have a huge library?
Yes,
for
we have a huge library.
To
like
keep
if
you talked about 1940.
If you visit our cellar, you'll be able to see the old casks of Muscatel going back to the 19th century. Some of these wines, and really part of the history of not only the company but the wine business in Portugal.
Yeah, you've been in the forefront for sure. But what is next for the company, or what do you see in the upcoming 10 years? What are the most what are the focus points for José Maria de Fonseca?
Well, I think we are continuously adapting the styles of our wines. I think people are looking more and more to lighter styles of wines, definitely more whites than reds in the future, and rosés and sparklings. Wines with a little bit lower alcohol, less presence of oak, more elegant in style. And I think our winemaking team already is a little bit there in their winemaking, but I think we will continue to evolve in that direction. I think that's what people will continue to want in the future.
Roger asks about the climate change. Have you been affected, and has this required you to alter your strategies and plan? We talked a little bit about climate change, but that's a good add-on. Have you been have you had to change your direction for the future? Yeah.
Well, in terms of as I mentioned, the way we plant the vineyards, the grape varieties, we need. And also, we need to continue to study continuously the effects of that climate has on the vineyards, and continue to make decisions on how we plant the vineyards, or how we grow the vines, how we treat the vineyards. Of course, the picking of the grape is more and more early.
It is, of course, yeah.
This
when
year,
when do
we started
when do you start picking?
10 years ago, we would start maybe mid-September. Now we start in mid-August, so we are a full month ahead. Maybe 10 years from now, we'll start in the end of July.
Yeah.
And some areas in Portugal already that happens. The whites start to be picked in July already.
Oh my God! And quite a lot of winemakers and producers I'm speaking to, they say that the main thing about climate change is that there are no regular vintages anymore. Every vintage is either super down. There's no middle of the road anymore.
But that's
do you agree on that?
That's the beauty. But it even happened even before this climate change. I think that's the beautiful thing about the product that we are working. This is not Coca-Cola. It's not. It's not the same style of product every year. No. And that's the beauty of wine, is discovering the characteristics of a certain year. Not saying that one year is better than the other, but there are different characteristics all the time.
Well, this has been really interesting tasting, going from 2 new releases, the Periquita White and Alma. And then, of course, the really a classic in Sweden, the Periquita Reserva, and then going into the fortified wines. It's been super. 18 and a 20-year-old and a 100-year-old. I know your envy, and you get the honor to sort of pick the winner in the contest. One of you will be winning 2 of these Cab Merlot glasses from Riedel, the Veloci series. So you can take.
Let's see. I cannot look.
Should I read it?
Yeah.
Mikael Andersson. Congratulations, Mikael. Grattis, Mikael. You won 2 of these glasses.
Cheers, Mikael.
Cheers, Mikael. I'll go into Swedish just for a brief moment. Vi ska runda av här och det är så kul att ni var med oss idag. Vi har kört José Maria de Fonseca special idag med vitt, rött och inte minst de fortifierade ljuvliga vinerna. Vi kommer hänga kvar här. De frågor vi inte har svarat på så kommer vi svara på i chatten. Glöm inte att prenumerera på vår YouTube-kanal, för där finns ju också alla våra sändningar från flera år tillbaka och alla är gratis att kika på. Kolla gärna också in hemsidan såklart, winetable.se. Där finns både tips, nyhetstips på viner, det finns artiklar och spännande reportage. Vi är tillbaka inom kort. Jag tror att nästa gång vi är tillbaka redan 3 oktober, det är nästa torsdag. Och då är det, då kommer jag sitta här igen. Men följ oss på winetable.se. And now, thank you, Antonio.
Thank you, Andreas.
Much fun to see you again.
You so much
and thank you for taking the time to stop by and
thank you all for taking your time to be here.
Yeah. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.